Eugena swimwear, designed for strength, style, and sun-soaked days. Discover the ultimate swimwear collection that embraces your unique beauty. With Eugena, you can make a statement wherever you go. Eugena swimwear, that's more than just a suit. It's a statement of self-expression.
Any truth to the rumor that Bruno didn't want David in the business?
Apparently, yeah. Can't say I blame him. Look what happened to him.
True enough. But David didn't let that stop him.
Not one bit. He embraced the nepotism and became a wrestler anyway, as Bruno Sammartino Jr. in Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Well, I gotta say I respect David for that. He knew what he wanted and went for it.
Me too. Not the easiest path, but he paved his own way. Gorilla, I was just thinking about David Sammartino's career. His first major feud and exposure to audiences was in a rematch with Larry Zbyszko in Georgia, even though his father had already beat Larry convincingly in the famous Shea Stadium show. So there wasn't much to avenge there.
Inevitably, Vince McMahon discovered the existence of another Sammartino.
That's right, Gorilla. He couldn't resist exploiting a potential gimmick for profit.
Vince saw dollar signs in Bruno's son, David.
Yeah, he tried to mold David into the next living legend.
But it didn't quite pan out the way Vince had hoped.
David had trouble living up to his father's legacy. The fans weren't as receptive.
Despite Vince's best efforts, David Sammartino's career never reached the heights of his father's.
It's a harsh truth, but not everyone can be a legend.
Vince had to accept that. Even with his power and influence, he couldn't force a Sammartino. And now? Let's head over to Lord Alfred Hayes, who's holding the Wrestlemania program for dear life.
What's up with Hayes? He looks like a stiff board.
I know, right? He's about as lively as a dead oak tree. But, hey, at least he's got something to read.
He's talking about Brutus Beefcake, the so-called pompous powerhouse.
What a joke. True, David's got a father who's a legend in this business, but he's nothing but a big, muscle-bound oaf. Still, when they cut over to Johnny Valiant and Brutus Beefcake, Valiant doesn't allow Beefcake to speak a single word.
Honestly, what on earth is he rambling about? Is he talking about a fist or a watch?
Evidently. Valiant's point is that if Beefcake extends his fist, Bruno is essentially threatening to surrender his watch.
So he's glaring at Beefcake, and Beefcake makes this absurd noise with his mouth. It's utterly bizarre.
It appears he's on the verge of uttering something, but changes his mind as Valiant proceeds with his rant.
He's literally shouting over Gene Okerlund, who hasn't yet reached the point where he's become adept at conveying the reprehensible nature of heels through his facial expressions.
This is somewhat of a glimpse into Okerlund's pre-evolution before he evolved into a master of storytelling with his facial expressions as the wrestlers engage in their verbiage.
So we return from our backstage interviews back to the squared circle.
And besides the main event, the WWF founder found it prudent to give David Sammartino versus...
Yeah, Gorilla. The most time on the show in 11 minutes and 44 seconds.
Yet, it's the slowest too.
Speaking of the slow and sluggish, David Sammartino is probably in the deepest dark shadow that there ever was, and there is no hope of glimpsing the light.
As I am sure as they were promoting this match, they were building David to be as famous as his dad.
Given the fact Bruno Sammartino is one of the biggest draws in the history of wrestling and the most consistent draws in the history of Madison Square Garden, so you got to try and keep Bruno in the fold.
So, Jesse, what's your take on father and son Sammartino?
Well, Gorilla, I got to tell you, I think they're pretty damn interchangeable. Same necks, same noses, even the haircuts are the same. I couldn't disagree with you more, Gorilla.
What? I couldn't disagree with you more, Jesse. They don't look anything alike, especially their haircuts.
Oh, come on, Gorilla. You know what I mean. They're both just generic Italian wrestlers. Fine. But you gotta admit, they're not exactly the most original wrestlers out there.
Meanwhile, in the opposing corner, Brother Brutus, the Zodiac Man, the man with no face, the man with no ass, the man with a 12-minute match at Wrestlemania 1.
Obviously, the man with no life.
Ha ha ha! Jesse, you are a riot.
I try, Gorilla. I try.
Ladies and gentlemen, the match begins as Brutus struts away after their lock.
Well, Gorilla, I think Beefcake and Valiant are causing stalling tactics.
I agree, Jesse. They're just trying to run out the clock and avoid a decisive finish. And Brutus Beefcake is a master of psychology.
Well, yeah, he can get you in that waistlock takedown and he can just ride you. You know, he's got that amateur background.
Yeah, he's a very skilled wrestler. Look at those scars on Bruno's face. Those are from years of wrestling in the ring.
Actually, Gorilla, those are from years of blading in the ring. Brutus performs a body slam on David and begins working on that arm.
Bruno consults with David during the course of the match.
David is just so short and stupid looking compared to Beefcake. He looks more like someone who can't pay his rent as a wrestler. Headlock takeover by Brutus designed to get David huffing and puffing and puffing.
This is designed to get David huffing and puffing, as we point out, because that drains the cardio. David then goes to a toe hold and stands cranking on it and picking the ankle where he comes loose and keeping control of Brutus's legs. This is okay because if you don't have an amateur base, then forget it.
Unless you're someone like Bundy.
Well, I understand he had an amateur base too.
But before we get started, Gorilla, I gotta ask you something. What base?
What do you mean? What base?
Most of these wrestlers have a bodybuilder roid base. You know, they're all jacked up on steroids.
Oh, that. Yeah, I see what you mean. But Bundy, he's got a different base.
What kind of base?
An amateur buffet base. His Golden Corral stretches all over the East Coast.
That's a good one, Gorilla.
Anyway, back to the match. David just hit a high vertical suplex on Brutus.
And he's going for the pin?
But Brutus kicks out at 2. Suddenly, David gets dumped to the dirty floor.
That's a dirty move.
And now Johnny Valiant is coming into the ring.
What's he gonna do? We've got a Pier 4 brawl on our hands tonight as Bruno Sammartino takes on Johnny Valiant. Bruno's about to unleash.
Bruno's gone nuts. He's throwing punches like a maniac.
And the crowd is loving it. They're going nuts for Bruno. Bruno knocks Valiant over the ropes.
And it's double disqualification.
This is pandemonium.
I've never seen anything like it. Now, I don't know what the larger design of this match was, but it wasn't sinking in for me.
Maybe it was just to get Bruno out in front of the crowded MSG.
It had to have been because we never saw David Sammartino ever again on a major show.
Interesting. It's like they use him as a prop to boost Bruno's image. David's father, Bruno, was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But David, well, let's just say he doesn't have the same talent.
I agree. David had a good look, but he's not very good in the ring.
No, he's not. But he's here for one reason only. To keep Bruno around for a few more years to draw in some extra crowds.
That's right. This match is happening for one reason only, to make money. So, my boy, I'm afraid I have some bad news about young David.
Oh, no. What's the matter?
To put it delicately, David's, bit short and stocky. And he doesn't seem to grasp the finer points of ring psychology like his father did.
That's a shame. His father was one of the best,